We're making moist and delicious pumpkin cottage cheese scones with chunks of chocolate and a simple glaze. They're gluten-free and full of flavor with oat flour, pumpkin, and cinnamon. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla. If you love making healthier swaps to enjoy our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. Now the key to getting the most pumpkin flavor is to strain our pumpkin puree first, because when it comes right out of the can, it has a lot of moisture in it. So this is the easiest way to instantly strain out the excess liquid. The three easiest options is to strain it using just a clean towel, or using a strainer bag, or just using some paper towels. Now if you use paper towels, you'll want to fold it about 3-ply so that it's strong enough, and you will want to be sure you don't fold it where you have a seam in the middle, because then it will break easily and your pumpkin will come squirting out. My favorite option is using a strainer bag, and these are really inexpensive, and I included a link if you'd like to check this one out. Now we're starting with half a cup of pumpkin puree, but once we drain it, it'll probably be more like 1/3 of a cup. So I'll just add it right in the middle of the strainer bag and just pull the bag closed. And as soon as I put some pressure, you can see the liquid already starting to run out. So I'm just going to twist the bag as it gets tighter and tighter on the pumpkin, and then just gently squeeze with my hands. So you can see all that liquid that we got out of just half a cup of pumpkin puree. Now we can just open the bag and easily scoop out the pumpkin back into our bowl. And now we have 1/3 cup of pumpkin that's a little bit more like a pumpkin paste. And this works really well for baking our scones. What makes these scones so moist inside, as well as giving them a protein boost, is using cottage cheese. And we're gonna blend it down first so that we can remove that curdled texture. So you can use a food processor, or I'm just gonna use the chopper cup that comes with my immersion blender. So I'm gonna add 3/4 a cup of cottage cheese, and I like to use the full fat for the most creaminess. Next, I'll add our pumpkin puree and our other wet ingredients, which includes 1/4 a cup of maple syrup and a teaspoon of vanilla. And then we'll just put on the lid and blend it on high until we no longer see the curdled texture. Well, that looks perfect. Now I didn't add the egg with this because I didn't want it to get overmixed. But now we can go ahead and drop in 1 egg and 1/4 a cup of cane sugar. And you can use any sugar you like. I like using the cane sugar because it's the least processed. And I'll go ahead and just blend this till combined. And then we can set this aside. Next, we want to take a medium-sized bowl and mix together our dry ingredients. Next, we're going to add our oat flour, and you could use store-bought, or you could easily grind your own. All you do is take old-fashioned or quick oats, put them into a blender or food processor, and just blend them on high for about maybe 20 to 30 seconds until you have a nice flour. So I'm going to add 1½ cups of oat flour, and I included a table on the recipe card that shows some additional flours that you can use instead. Now you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to the full recipe with all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Now if we only used oat flour, the scones could turn out a little bit gummy, so I find that works really well to add in some gluten-free flour. So this is 2/3 of a cup of a gluten-free flour blend. But you could also use all-purpose flour if you didn't need these to be gluten-free. And then for our seasonings, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And then we will add 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we'll just whisk this together until it's all really well blended. Next, we need to add our butter, and there's lots of different methods, including freezing the butter, shredding it in with like a cheese grater. I have tested them all, but I have found that the easiest and most straightforward is just to take the butter right out of the fridge and then just dice it up with a knife. So we'll just use 1/2 cup of butter, which is 1 stick. And then I'm just gonna slice it up nice and thin. And I'll just quickly give it a rough dice and then just add it all to our bowl. And then you could use a pastry cutter to work this into the flour, but I found the easiest way is just to use my hands. So I'm just gonna go in and just kind of squish the flour into the butter. I'm just going to feel around for some big chunks of butter and then just break it up with my fingers. And we'll want to work quickly because we don't want to melt the butter. And then now that our mixture is nice and coarse and crumbly, we're just going to add in our pumpkin mixture. And then just with my spatula, I'll go around and just mix it all together. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the video description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. And we just want to mix it until we've picked up all the flour from the bottom of the bowl. And then we're going to end up with this very sticky and fluffy dough. And next we can add in the best part, which is our chunky chocolate. And you can use any variety that you like. So I'm just adding 1/2 cup of these chocolate chunks. You could certainly use chocolate chips or anything else that floats your boat or that meets your dietary needs. So I'll just very gently fold these in. And then on my cutting board, I'm just going to spread a little bit more of this oat flour just to help make it a little less sticky. And we can drop our dough right in the middle. And then to keep it from sticking to your hands, it's really easy to just add a little bit of some light olive oil right in your palm and just rub that together. And then we're just going to press down our dough into a nice big circle. We want it to be about 1 inch thick. And I do like to tuck in the edges, but I like to keep the top a little bit chunky because I just think that's really aesthetic. Now at this stage, my butter is still really solid, and so I'm just gonna slice it and put it right onto the cookie sheet. But if you find that the butter is starting to really soften, then you might want to put this into your freezer for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Now you could slice this into as many pieces as you like. I'm just gonna go ahead and slice it into 8. So with a nice sharp knife, I'm just going right down the middle, and we'll cut each of those into 4s. And then to bake these, I've just taken a piece of parchment paper to line my cookie sheet. And I can just use my knife to get under each scone and transfer it onto the sheet. Once they're on your sheet, you can come in by hand and just kind of finesse the shape a little bit if needed. And I like to come in and make sure there's some chocolate pieces on top of the scones because as far as I'm concerned, you can never have too much chocolate. And it just makes them really aesthetic. And this is optional, but to just add a little more texture and crunch as well as some bling, I like to sprinkle a little bit of turbinado sugar on top. So I'll just take some of my fingers and just sprinkle a little bit right on top of each scone. Well, these look gorgeous and they're ready to go into a 400-degree oven for anywhere between about 20 to 22 minutes. Now we're baking this at a slightly higher temperature because we want the outside to toast fairly quickly while the inside just stays nice and tender. So into the oven these go. Well, here are our scones out of the oven after 20 minutes and they are gorgeous. You can see that they're just lightly toasted on the edges and they are nice and soft on the inside. Now you could certainly just enjoy them as is, or we can make a really simple glaze to put over the top. So in a small bowl, I've just taken 1/4 cup of some powdered sugar, and then we're just gonna add 1 teaspoon of some milk. And I'll just stir this together. And then you can adjust the consistency as you like it. I want to have it thick enough where it can still drizzle. And then we can just take our scone and drizzle it right over the top. I dare you not to smile while doing this. Now you can wait until the glaze sets, or if you're impatient like me, you can just enjoy it right away. That is so good. As soon as you bite in, you get the best fall flavors. You get the pumpkin with the cinnamon and the allspice. I love how it's lightly toasted on the outside, but then the inside is just soft and spongy. And chocolate and pumpkin are besties as far as I'm concerned, and I love having that little drizzle over the top. But what I love most is that these are made with clean, natural ingredients, which are gonna leave me feeling just as good even after I enjoy it. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in my kitchen. I've included a link to the full recipe and it's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I invite you to join me again in my kitchen.